It was exactly midnight when Ethan heard the first knock on his door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks that echoed through the silence of his small countryside cabin. He froze, unsure if it was the wind or his imagination. No one ever came out that far, especially not at that hour. The knock came again, louder this time. Ethan's heart began to pound. He glanced at the clock on the wall. 12:03 a.m. He wasn't expecting anyone. He grabbed the flashlight from his desk and walked toward the door, trying to convince himself it was nothing. But when he opened it, a man stood there, drenched from the rain, shivering, with the hood pulled low over his face. "I'm sorry to bother you," the man said, his voice calm and polite. "My car broke down a mile back. I saw your light and hoped you could help." Ethan hesitated. He'd lived there alone since his father passed 6 months ago, and he wasn't used to visitors. But the rain was falling hard, and something about the stranger's tired eyes made him step aside. "Come in," Ethan said. The stranger thanked him and stepped inside, leaving a trail of water across the floor. Ethan offered him a towel and a cup of coffee, then sat across from him at the small wooden table. The power flickered as thunder rolled in the distance. They talked for a while. The man said his name was Daniel. He claimed to have been driving through the area on his way to see an old friend, but his car had died in the storm. Ethan nodded, half listening, distracted by something about him that felt strangely familiar. When the lightning flashed outside, Ethan caught a clearer look at Daniel's face, and a strange chill crept down his spine. He couldn't explain it, but he'd seen those eyes before. "You live here alone?" Daniel asked. "Yeah," Ethan replied. "Used to live here with my dad. He passed away recently." Daniel nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry to hear that. Your father, was he a kind man?" Ethan stared at him for a moment, unsure why he'd asked that. "He was," he said finally. "A good man. We didn't talk much toward the end, though." Daniel's eyes softened. "Sometimes we say goodbye before we're ready." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" The stranger didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something wrapped in a small piece of cloth. He placed it gently on the table and slid it toward Ethan. "I think this belongs to you," he said. Ethan unwrapped the cloth and froze. Inside was a silver pocket watch, old, rusted, and worn. His father's watch. The same one that had been buried with him. Ethan's mouth went dry. "Where did you get this?" Daniel looked down. "It was given to me. Said it was meant for you when the time was right." This isn't possible," Ethan whispered. "That watch was buried with my dad." "I know," Daniel said quietly. The lights flickered again, and for a split second, Ethan thought he saw something in the man's face, a resemblance that made his chest tighten. The curve of his jaw, the calmness in his eyes. "You look like him," Ethan said, his voice trembling. "You look like my father." Daniel smiled faintly. "I suppose I should. I've carried a lot of his regrets." Ethan stood up, heart pounding. "Who are you?" The man sighed deeply. "I'm someone who made mistakes, someone who never told his son how proud he was, someone who left things unsaid." Ethan shook his head. "No, you can't be." But the stranger's gaze was steady, filled with a sadness Ethan had only ever seen once before, the night before his father's funeral, when he'd stood at the grave, whispering apologies no one would hear. "I didn't mean to leave you alone," Daniel said softly. "But I couldn't rest until you forgave yourself." Ethan's throat tightened. "Forgive myself? For what?" "For not answering that call," Daniel said. "You've carried that guilt for months. It wasn't your fault, son. Some things, they just happen." Ethan's knees went weak. He remembered the night of the accident, the missed call from his father, the message he never returned. He'd blamed himself ever since. Tears welled up in his eyes. "Dad." Daniel smiled, his voice breaking. "You've done well, Ethan. Better than I ever did. It's time to let go." Lightning flashed, flooding the room with white light, and when Ethan blinked, the man was gone. The towel lay folded neatly on the chair. The front door was closed, no wet footprints, no sound of footsteps outside. Only the pocket watch remained on the table, ticking softly. Ethan picked it up, his hands shaking. On the back of the watch, faintly engraved, were words he'd never seen before. "Forgive yourself, son." He sat there for hours, listening to the steady tick of the watch, the storm fading into silence. When morning came, the world outside was calm, washed clean by the rain. Ethan stepped onto the porch, the pocket watch in his hand. He didn't know if the man had been real, a dream, or something from beyond, but the weight in his chest was gone. For the first time in months, he felt peace. And sometimes, when the wind blew just right, he thought he could hear it again, 3 gentle knocks at midnight, reminding him that love never truly leaves, it just finds a new way to come home.